On today's show, the Hawks came out of the All-Star break with a really nice win on Thursday and then had the exact opposite performance on Friday. We'll get into what went wrong and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2174 of the Locked On Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening here near the end of the month of February. You can have your cake and drink it too right now with 5-Hour Energy. Birthday cake flavor is back. No fork needed. It's got the cakey flavor that you actually want, a caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. You can order right now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. And today's podcast will be diving into what became a 128-97 loss for the Hawks. As a PSA, if you are watching on YouTube or listening at home, I am actually recording from State Farm Arena late night here on Friday evening. For those asking, I'm trying to be talking about this all the time, but I am still slightly displaced from my apartment following an apartment flood a couple weeks ago. Hopefully getting back to some sense of normalcy pretty soon, but that's part of why I'm recording from the arena, so please forgive any background noise. But yeah, it was a pretty gross, I would say hideous, whatever kind of word you want to use to describe this one, it was probably appropriate because the Hawks were, like I will say, and I'm not going to say too many nice things about the Hawks on this podcast, I would guess. It was not quite as bad as the final score indicated. I had someone that's a regular listener miss the game and sent me a message saying, hey, was it really this bad? And the answer I gave them was, no, it wasn't this bad. It's a 15-point game with 6 minutes to go. So it doesn't change anything. It was still a very poor performance from the Hawks, which I'll talk about a lot on this podcast. If you're new to the show, what we do on this kind of post-game episode is talking about the big picture first and then kind of dive into the more granular observations as the game goes along. But it was, competitive for a large portion, and then it wasn't so competitive late. And overall, I understand, and I said this last night, so it's not revisionist history. It was a tough spot for the Hawks, back-to-back with travel. Miami was at full strength and on full rest. So the Hawks were underdogs in this game for a reason, even at home. That's what FanDuel said. That's what I was saying coming into the game. But that does not excuse or hand wave what was a pretty dismal performance. So, there's room for a little bit of grace. Had the Hawks been competitive and lost this game, but they were really not competitive in the second half, which is hard to swallow after they were so good in a lot of different ways on Thursday. And part of the, I think, frustration that I saw boiling over with Hawks fans tonight is not only was it a blowout loss, it was a home loss, and the Hawks are now 10-16 at home. And, it's hard to talk about in some respects because I talked to players and coaches and front office folks, and they would all tell you they'd rather be at home than on the road. There's no world in which a team would prefer to be on the road. But the Hawks have been just notably better on the road this year. And I think it's mostly small sample size noise, but it's happening even more. Again, last night they played really well and won a game on the road as an underdog. They come home tonight, and it was the exact opposite. So that's the backdrop of this one. But they're down 15 points early. They came back and tied it, had a shot in the air at the free throw line that would have taken the lead late in the first half. Got down only 12 going into the fourth quarter, so it wasn't like it was totally over. But then the fourth quarter began in dismal fashion, like a 9-0, 10-0 run, and it was basically over from there. And as you would expect in a game that was lost by even what was probably a 20-point margin versus 31 was the actual final score, it was basically a two-way disaster for Atlanta. I will say, though, the offense was the clearly worst side of the floor. If you watch this one or looked around the numbers, anything like that, it was a pretty desolatory offensive performance for the Hawks. In the end, they had about a 95 offensive rating in this game. That is at less than a point per possession. That's not what you want to be doing against. Look, Miami's good defensively. That's worth noting. But it was one of the 5 worst efficiency games for the season for the Hawks on offense, and that tells the story. They had a 77 offensive rating in the half court in this game. That is also very dismal. When they were able to play faster, they were able to score a little bit better, but it was just nothing going offensively. And here's the craziest thing about this game. The Hawks shot the ball well from 3. I made a point last night on the show to talk about how the Hawks actually were even probably more impressive than you might think in that win over Philadelphia because they didn't shoot the ball well, and they still controlled the game and won it on the road. Tonight it was the exact opposite. They were 16 of 38 from 3. 42%. They shot a lot better tonight than they did last night in Philadelphia. And last night they won by 10. Tonight they lost by 30. So that was the one area where it's like, okay, they made shots from three. So what the heck happened? It's really hard to shoot that well from three and still be this bad on offense. But they did it in this game. And the biggest reason why is that they shot 34.5% on 2-point shots. For reference, league average is above 50% on twos. So like that is just absolutely horrible. Officially in the box score, the Hawks were 19 of 50 in all shots that started in the paint. That's a 38% mark. That's terrible on twos. Cleaning the glass, which I use all the time, had the Hawks at 5 for 30. Yes, 5 for 30 on shots between 4.5 feet and 3-point range. So like anything that was a not rim 2-point shot was just like totally dreadful. And last night, even in a win, I did mention this, the Hawks have been the worst rim finishing team in the entire league now for like 6 or 7 weeks in this current iteration of a team. So Kuminga is not playing yet. Hopefully he will be pretty soon, but he's out with a knee. Since McCollum and Kispert arrived, so that's January 11th when they debuted, this has been the worst in the entire league team at finishing around the rim. And it got worse today. They were 60% or so coming into the game, which is, they may not sound bad, but right at the rim, you want to be like closer to 70%. And in this game, they were 15 of 28, and that benefited from some garbage time when they were better down the stretch. So they just couldn't finish. Lots of missed layups, lots of missed little floaters. And yeah, sometimes if you want to be an optimist, it was kind of a when it rains, it pours situation offensively in this game. Like they missed a lot of shots that they normally make. Even a team that's not great finishing is going to make more than they did tonight, more often than not. But it just did not happen across the board. And it was like I said, it was kind of an outlier bad game in that respect. For example, Jalen Johnson was 4 of 17 on 2-point shots in this game. Jalen Johnson is an all-star, top 30 player in the league, 4 of 17 on twos only. That doesn't happen very often. But still, some limitations for this offense are pretty evident right now. Even last night, it wasn't great offensively. It was a defense-first win in Philadelphia. And that same sample size, dating back to when Kispert and McCollum debuted, the Hawks are like a bottom 5 offense. And that's not exactly shocking if you watch the way they play and their talent and all that stuff as well. They actually did take care of the ball pretty well in this game, only 12 turnovers. But after taking 41 free throws last night, they only had 15 tonight. That's a pretty paltry number. And for good measure, they missed 6 of them. So, and 2 of those makes that they made were actually in total garbage time from Keaton Wallace. So, yeah, it was non-existent there getting the line. Really only 2 guys that I would say like played even decently well on offense. I would say Okongwu and McCollum were the 2 that I would say, all right, those guys were fine on offense. Everybody else, when you adjust for their normal baselines, were below it, and I'd say bad combination in this spot. If you want to be slightly more positive, I would say defensively, they were able to hold up pretty reasonably until the fourth quarter. It did collapse late to make things look worse than it actually was. The Heat scored 24 points in the last 5.5 minutes when the game was already basically over. So some of the overall stats are a little bit out of whack, which is why I do the work to kind of go through them and tell you what actually happened in the game. They weren't sharp defensively. I'm not saying they played well. They didn't. Miami had 72 points in the paint. That's a crazy high number that you don't want to ever allow. And like 3/4 of those were within the first 3 quarters. So it wasn't like fluky by any means. The Heat shot 60% on twos compared to the Hawks shooting 30-something% on their own. They didn't really create havoc in this game. I've said many times this year, but I'll say it again now. The Hawks kind of go defensively as they go with havoc creation. And this is a team that's not like 100% reliant on havoc. And when I say havoc, I mean taking the ball away, deflections, steals, etc. In this game, 4 steals and 9 turnovers. That's just not going to ever be enough for this team, given their rebounding issues. And they're playing kind of not small ball, but like they do play a little bit smaller than some teams do. And that was the case here. So to be fair, this was a defensive performance that was not dismal. It was below average, but it wasn't horrible. I think the offense was legitimately about as bad as it could possibly be. So if you follow the show closely, this will not surprise you. I would have said, and I will say now, it's hard to reckon with this. And I'm not saying to feel satisfied. If you told me a week ago the Hawks would go 1-1 against Philly and Miami, I would have been like, you know what? Pretty reasonable, considering that they were going to be underdogs in Philadelphia, and they were. And 1-1 is probably the expected outcome in those 2 games. Unfortunately, when you lose the second one and lose it this badly and this dismally in your home building, the vibes of 1-1 are not the same as the vibes would have been if they had played well enough tonight. Even if they lost this game by 5, it would have been like, all right, not great, but they got blown out. They were not competitive late in this game. And after a good win last night, that really was kind of inspiring They gave a lot of that back today. Look, on the bright side, it's 1 of 82. People hate hearing that. It's also still true. And the Hawks do have some winnable games coming up, but not the night going into the weekend that anybody would have wanted around here. And we'll get into how of kind of more of the details of this one in a second, how to look ahead, individual player performances, and more. And it's coming up in just one moment. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel's giving you the chance to make the dream a reality with their NBA sweepstakes right now. Here's how it works. Use your private boost on any NBA future, and you will be automatically entered for a shot to win up to trip for 2 to the NBA Finals. That's right. Flights, tickets, the entire experience. If you're already looking at the board right now, trying to decide which team can actually make a run to the title, it's perfect time right now to lock it in. The futures are already great. With picking teams to win the conferences or win the entire championship adds extra layer of excitement to every single game down the stretch. And now, not only can your future bets actually win for you, they also send you the NBA Finals as well. Plus, they still have a full slate of offerings across the board on other sports at FanDuel when it comes to college basketball or baseball, football, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer. They have Olympic stuff, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Plus, they have all kinds of offerings, basically bet-wise, that you can imagine, including point spreads and over-unders, money lines, player props. They have game props, live betting, parlays, and so much more. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. And when you get there, use your private boost right now on NBA Future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, official putting partner of the NBA. New year, new systems. This is a time of year where a lot of us, like, most parts of high reward businesses, and actually just think there has to be a better way to do this. There just has to be a better way, and now there actually is. And if your communications to be streamlined, it's one of the quickest upgrades you actually make to your business. That's what today's show is sponsored by the folks at Quo. It's spelled Quo, and it's a smarter way to run your business communications. When your team is actually reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're actually creating more opportunities to connect with your customers. That's very important, of course. And I love how Quo makes every single thing simple. Your whole team can call or text from one shared number. Nothing actually gets missed along the way. Everyone sees the whole thread. It makes replying faster and more personal. Or right from your phone or from your computer. You can actually even keep your existing number if you want to. Plus, they have smart AI tools at Quo that automatically log and summarize calls, highlight next steps, and so much more. So details never slip through the cracks. That's important. And it's no surprise right now that Quo is the #1 business phone system according to G2. Just more than 90,000 businesses, including solo operators and growing teams alike. And make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips through. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO for Quo, QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you, as always, for making this your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks, and I appreciate you being here on today's show. If you ever want to go ad-free or get some more perks along the way, you can join the Everydayer Club right now, and the place to go is lockedonhawks.supercast.com to learn more. From the very beginning of this game, it was not exactly pretty. The Hawks had the first 6 possessions without a point. Not a good start offensively, and dug an immediate hole. They couldn't make a shot early in the game. That's flat out. They were 4 of 19 overall from the field, including 0 of 9 from Jalen and Ricochet. Just a lot of missed shots. I will say the process was not quite as bad as the results. Early on, they missed a lot of good looks in the first half, but they still had some over dribbling, over passing, forcing stuff. Nikhil, I thought, had a really tough first quarter on top of the bad shooting for everybody else. Defensively, they were not as bad. They were okay other than protecting the paint in this one, but it was falling behind early and often. The entire competitive portion of this game, rotationally, was basically the same as it was last night. It was McCollum as the first sub, then Kispert and Landale as the second and third. Mo Gay was the 9th man again as the backup power forward. In this one, he played only when Jalen didn't, again, like last night. And other than garbage time with Keaton Wallace playing, nothing else really changed. They went more into Kispert than Zach in this one because Kispert was playing a little bit better, I thought. Not necessarily better than Zach, but like better than he was last night. But regardless, it was pretty similar in that respect. Just didn't have I saw people complaining. It's like, nobody played well in this game. That's kind of the long and short of it. Results with the second unit, by the way, were not any better. McCollum had a hard time staying in front of Tyler Hero, for example, early on in this game. They were down 13 at the end of the first quarter. They had the lowest scoring first quarter of the season with 16 points in the opening frame. They were 7 of 24 from the field and 1 of 8 from 3 with 4 turnovers in the quarter. And look, they did get out of the hole, as we'll talk about in a second, but a lot of the damage is like, hey, the first quarter, they just had a non-competitive performance on offense and missed a bunch of shots, and that's hard to kind of dig out of. They did make some shots early on in the second quarter. The results were better, but really, for me, especially watching it back the second time around, all that happened in the second quarter was that the Hawks made some threes. That's mostly what the damage was on the positive side. They made 7 threes in like 8.5 minutes. McCollum made 3, Nikhil made 2. Like they just started to make a lot of threes to kind of close the gap, and that was important. You got to make shots to come back from a double-digit deficit, but at the same time, it was not exactly the prettiest way to close the gap. Overall, it was a 15-4 run by the Hawks to tie the game. They tied the game late in the first half, had a free throw in the air to take the lead that missed, and then from there they lost the last 2 minutes of the half by 6 to kind of give some of that momentum back. But again, other than the barrage of threes for that middle part of the second quarter, it was a pretty ugly offensive half with less than a point per possession, and that was not exactly going to change after halftime. They had a 3 on the first trip of the third quarter, which is a positive sign, but then they had 4 straight empty trips. Quinn called a timeout that was like he was exasperated with the offense. By the way, he had a bad challenge for the second night in a row. Quinn challenged an offensive foul on Jalen. I get why he did it because Jalen was number one, getting fouled a lot in this game that were not being called, in my opinion. But also, the shot went in. Jalen won a challenge, and I thought originally Quinn might have done it like out of reaction, but he did ask the bench, and the challenge expert said a challenge. It looked like so that was a bad challenge. It didn't work, and they've lost their first challenge now in back-to-back games, like pretty early in the game. Did it matter in this one? No, but just not great process overall. They did get back-to-back threes from Jalen and Okongwu, and they were within 4, pretty like midway through the third quarter. They were within 4 points. But then they allowed a 10-0 run, like right away, down 14. They missed like 5 shots in a row at the rim. The Hawks were 3 of 16 on twos in the third quarter. So when the game was much more in the balance, as it was in the third quarter, the Hawks, simply put, could not make a shot at the rim. And they only lost the score by 6 points. But at the same time, like so many missed opportunities were on the table. That's probably like most on display in that third quarter. They did make a 3. Nikhil made a 3 at the buzzer to make it a 12-point game. So they were in it. They're down 12. Like you're obviously not favored to win, but you're in the game there. But that bit of energy that came with the buzzer beater was very short-lived. The Heat went on an 11-0 run to begin the fourth quarter, and that was essentially the end of the game. It went from, all right, the Hawks are kind of in this thing to it's over within like 2 or 3 minutes, basically. I made a note at that point because the rest of the game, you could argue, was some variation of garbage time. But at the end of like 3.25 quarters of this game, the Hawks scored 75 points on 83 possessions offensively, and they shot 30% on 2-point attempts. That basically tells the story. The lead was down to 15 very briefly in the fourth quarter because Okongwu had a nice stretch offensively, but there was back to 20 in a hurry. The starters were out of the game by the 3-minute mark. This is the rare time when Quinn actually pulled the starters. Kind of a weird thing, by the way. I don't really know anything about this other than it was an odd, and we're deep into the podcast now. I don't know why when they brought in Keaton Wallace and Mo Gay to kind of clear the bench, they didn't go to Asa Newell. Jock Landale was playing, which that's fine, but like Ace is a rookie. Normally he'd be like the guy to put in. Buddy Hield and Gabe Vincent are veterans. Those often guys they're not often going to put in at the very, very end of the game. This is a small, weird note, but one more time, just because I'm a stickler for context and clarity and making sure things are accurate. I don't believe the Hawks were 30 points worse than the Heat in this game. And the final score got out of whack in a hurry. Like, again, just to say this out loud, it was a 15-point game with 5.5 minutes to go. It was still a 20-point game with 4 minutes to go. And then Miami just like poured it on at the end when the game was like totally over. So I make nothing of the ending. But even if you adjust for some of the garbage time nonsense, it was still a lopsided loss. And that's not what anybody was looking for on this night for the Hawks. All right, in a second, I'll dive into player-by-player evaluations, and then I look at the coming week for the Hawks, which is a little bit potentially brighter than it was tonight. We'll get into all of that and more in just one moment. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every single aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are going to be the best and which might just be sleepers in your area. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and there's only one that's going to take the top spot. And 5-Hour Energy right now has a wide variety of flavors, which is something for every single person in your life. And 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost that I know I love with zero sugar, and that's a huge, huge perk for me. Plus, at 5-Hour Energy, they have tons of different flavor innovations that are actually planned in the future, and you let your mind go absolutely wild with combinations that might come up in the future, and there are tons of options already available to you. My personal favorite flavor, number one draft pick right now, is the peach mango flavor. I love the peach, generally speaking. Plus, there's depth and sweetness from the mango itself. It's got balance, and of course, it brings the pickup that actually I really just need to stay up late at night covering the Hawks. And this is the only flavor that I like by any means. They have strawberry banana that's absolutely delightful. It has a smoothie taste that you love. It's easy to drink. It's rewarding. They also have the classic cherry flavor. It's bold, it's sweet, it's bright, it's smooth, and it has a clean finish as well. You simply cannot go wrong with any 5-hour energy flavor with my picks. Plus, they have other options like cotton candy and grape, confetti crazy, fruity rainbow, Hawaiian breeze, sour apple, tropical burst, and much more. Find your new flavor right now, 5-hour energy shots at this moment, and they're available online at 5hourenergy.com. That's 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. All right, as I always will on the podcast after a game, talk about the individual player stuff. Not a ton of bright spots for those that might have missed it over the last couple of days. I got questions today about Jonathan Kuminga. He was on the bench for the Hawks. He is still out with the knee bone bruise and could be debuting as soon as this coming week, but it's a reevaluation timeline. I will at least note this because somebody said it to me that I will not name. On a night when the Hawks couldn't finish anything around the rim, that is Kuminga's number one trait, so that's potentially helpful as he arrives. But in the meantime, he was the only guy that was out for the Hawks in this game. As mentioned before, DNPs for Buddy Hield, Asa Newell, and Gabe Vincent. And Keaton Wallace played only 3 minutes of total garbage time, so that was basically that. Of the 9 guys who actually played, Mo Gay played the least, did not score a point in the game, didn't take a shot actually, had a rebound and a steal. I thought Mo was kind of like meh defensively, like didn't make a huge impact. Offensively was basically a 0. Not his fault they got killed in his minutes, but that was kind of everybody in this game. So I thought Mo was kind of a, blah performance. Nothing terrible, but nothing great either. Jock Landale, 19 minutes, 3 points on 7 shots. He was 0-4 from 3, 1 of 3 on 2s. Did have 6 rebounds and an assist, but just couldn't make a shot like anybody else in this game. At least was competitive around the rim, but it's not a huge rim protector. And the Heat kind of got downhill whenever they wanted to for the most part in this game. So Landale, he'll have better nights for sure. It was not his best work necessarily. Corey Kispert, 6 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists in 24 minutes. Did make a 3, 1 of 2 on 2s. I thought he was a little bit better than last night, but he was the only guy that was really struggling last night. So that's not a huge barometer of success. I don't think Kispert was good, but at least I will say about Kispert, he plays really hard. That shows up sometimes in positive and negative directions, but he does play with kind of an abandon that was clear being in person tonight. McCollum was one of the only guys who played well, I thought, in this game, offensively at least. 20 points on 16 shots, hit 4 threes, was 4 on 2s as well. Had an assist, did have 3 turnovers. That was kind of fine. I think defensively, he was much worse tonight than he was last night, where I thought he was just good across the board, basically. Tonight, Hero got whatever he wanted against McCollum the entire game, I would say. I don't know why he was on here as much as he was, but that was kind of a hiccup. I thought TJ was not the problem by any means in this game, but I think defensively he was giving a lot back, we'll say. To the starters, Zachary Shea was really good last night and not so good tonight. 4 points on 8 shots, 4 rebounds. He was one of the guys who couldn't make a shot inside the arc. He was 0-5 on 2s. Defensively made some nice moments, but nothing spectacular. He had a block, but I thought he was, probably not as bad as the shoe numbers indicate, but just not a good night for Zach. And I was fine with him not playing as much as he did last night, because last night I made a point to note he played more. He earned it last night. Tonight he was not particularly good, so no issues there. Okongwu was the other guy who played well on offense. 22 points. He actually shot well inside the arc. He was 4 of 7 on 2s. That's actually really good compared to everybody else. Hit 4 threes as well. 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Had a steal, no turnovers, 2 blocks. I thought he was pretty good overall. There was a stretch in the first half where Bam was giving it to him a little bit, but after that kind of normalized. Okongwu did play well, and he was a game best of the guys who played for the Hawks. Only minus 11 in the game, and I thought that was probably pretty reasonable because he was not the problem in this one. Dyson Daniels, 4 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. He was actually the only guy with multiple steals on the Hawks roster, but similar to everybody else, couldn't make a 2. 2 of 6 on 2-point shots. Offensively, kind of a creaky night. Did have 3 off 3 rebounds to Dyson. But defensively was good. There was a couple of moments where I was sitting next to Kevin Chouinard of Hawks.com, ATL on 29, where we're oohing and ahhing about Dyson making crazy plays defensively, and that's always the case. He's so good on defense, but offensively, he was not good in this game. He was part of the problem, and not the whole problem by any means, but certainly not part of the solution on that end of the floor. Nikhil, 20 points on 18 shots, did make 4 threes. I thought he played pretty poorly for a lot of this game, did make some shots, but 3 turnovers and a bunch of drives to nowhere in the first half. It helped that he made some threes later to kind of even things out a little bit, but not his best work by any means, even with 20 points. You have to probably watch the game closely to see what I'm talking about, but it's possible to not play well, have 20 points, and he basically did that in this game. And then Jalen Johnson, it's funny because he had a triple-double, and it's become a meme to some degree, like you aren't good unless you have triple-doubles, basically. But he had 16 points, 16 rebounds, and 11 assists. That in itself speaks to Jalen's talent level, right? The fact that he can have what I'm about to say was a bad game for him and still have triple-double, that's fair, but he just couldn't make a shot. Like he was getting, I thought he got officiated pretty poorly in this game. There were multiple times when he probably should have got to the line, but he was 4 of 17 on twos in the game. And that just, it can't happen. Like too many times this year, Jalen gets caught in that like 6-7 foot range, like a 1 foot kind of half fadeaway shot. And he does make that shot sometimes, but for a player as athletic as he is, too many of those kind of middle, I would say kind of mini settling choices around the rim. Just couldn't make a shot and only got to the line once for two attempts. Defensively, like, highs and lows, like often with Jalen, but he'll have better nights. He was really good last night, I thought. Tonight, not so much, but you probably get the feeling on this one if you didn't watch the game. It was not the best work for anyone, and I'm sure there were some heavy legs. I think in the first quarter, you could kind of see the Hawks were not like flying around, and their first back-to-back in a while. I will say mercifully, there is not another back-to-back for the Hawks for a month. Literally a month, but from now is the next back-to-back. That's comes needed for sure, but a night that I don't want to hand wave. This is a very bad performance. I won't yell and scream like some might about it. It's still only one game, but it was one game that was played very poorly for the Hawks. From here, the Hawks play again on Sunday afternoon in this very building, a 3:30 Kids Day game against the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn is quite bad, I would say. Brooklyn's in town for the first of 3 games in a row against teams that are not exactly competing. They have Brooklyn on Sunday, they have Washington on Tuesday, and then Washington again on Thursday. For reference, Washington actually won tonight, but they played Indiana, another tanking team. The Nets lost by a lot in Oklahoma City. It is what it is. So I will just say this. On paper, games are not played on paper, but on paper, it is the easiest 3-game stretch of the season. You cannot, in the NBA right now, pretty much, it's not almost impossible, unless you're playing Sacramento because they've lost 15 games in a row. They're horrible. Short of that, 3 games in a row at home, no back-to-backs against 3 tanking teams. If there was ever a time when I would say a team should win 3 games in a row, this is it. Now, nothing's a must-win. I never say that. But it would be this is a rare time when it would be actually disappointing if the Hawks did not win the next 3 games because of who they're playing. Nothing's a given at all, but we'll see how that happens. And it comes at a good time. It would have been nicer to win this one. Like if the Hawks win this game today, they have a chance to have a 5-game winning streak, in my opinion. Now it's like, all right, now you got to win these next 3 games. And I'm not, I don't often say that, but the Nets do compete more than some teams at the bottom of the league. I will say they're well coached. Jordan Fernandez is really good. They have a young roster, we'll say. It's a flawed roster, and they also know what they need to do in order to lose games. But they do have Michael Porter Jr., who's really good. They have other guys, like Day'Ron Sharpe's pretty good. Like they have some real NBA players on the team. So it's not a given at all. The Hawks have to show up and play well. But I will also say this. It's a spot where the Hawks will be favored to win by a lot if they show up and play well. But that if is an if. They have to play well to win the game. And then we'll get into the Washington stuff later on. By the way, as a PSA, the Wizards seemingly have indicated that Trae Young is not going to play at all in the 2 Hawks games this week. That would have been an interesting situation. Maybe he'll be in town and that'll be covered, I'm sure. But in the meantime, Sunday afternoon will be the next game on the agenda for the Hawks. And let's just say that's a game that they probably need to win after the way this game went tonight. All right, everybody, that's all I have on a Friday night edition of the podcast. Please take a second. If you are sicko and followed this along this far on a Friday after a bad loss, I sincerely appreciate the support. Please check out the podcast. If you're new to the podcast and found this long, I appreciate that as well. But please subscribe, tell your friends. If you are an audio listener to podcasts, and I always say this, I am as well. I am usually an audio listener to podcasts. Take a second and subscribe, like, etc. on YouTube, and the same in reverse. If you're a YouTube watcher, very important that you also subscribe, download, etc. on audio to help the podcast. I very much appreciate all that. Please leave ratings and reviews, all that fun stuff. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky if you want to at BT Rowland. And also my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks can be found at Patreon.com/BT FanDuel.com/BTRowland. Everybody, I'll see you after the game on Sunday afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you all next time.